Welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You see that website below, Panther-Lair.com. Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Most comprehensive source, Pitt sports news, football, basketball, recruiting. You know the whole deal. You know we have the message boards where you can talk with the other Pitt fans. Hundreds and thousands of them all day, every day, posting new messages about Pitt sports. They're Pitt fans. They want to talk about Pitt sports. You're a Pitt fan. You want to talk about Pitt sports. It's all right there. Panther-Lair.com. You wake up this morning, you get your morning shower, your morning shave, and your morning Pitt video, and you also check the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. And of course, we always ask you to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, the like button. You see it over probably over there on your left, and we have the subscribe button easily posted for you right down there. It's kind of right below where I'm pointing. You hit that subscribe button, and not only will you make me happy because those subscriber numbers go up, but you also can turn on notifications so you get an alert sent to your phone anytime we release a new Morning Pitt video or we go live for one of our live streams. You know, we do our weekly Panther Lair show at 8:30 every Wednesday night. This week, since Pitt has a basketball game at 7 o'clock, we're going to bump that back just a little bit. We don't want to start our live show while the basketball game's still going on, so we'll do it as a post-game show. We'll start probably 9:15, maybe 9:30 at the latest, depending on how long Pitt's game at Louisville goes. But it'll be a post-game show, and you can join in. We'll have the chat screen over here on the right-hand side of the screen. You can post your comments and your questions, and we'll talk about the game. It'll be some back and forth. You post your comments and questions. I'll read them and answer them, react to them, and we'll have some interaction. It'll be fun. It'll be a post-game. It's like a call-in post-game show, but we can't hear your voice, just your words. But the problem is we don't know exactly when the game's going to end, so we don't know exactly when we're going to start the show. If you want to make sure you don't miss it, click the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and you'll get an alert sent to your phone. It says, hey, Panther Lair is going live with their post-game show to talk about Pitt's win at Louisville. Because I think they're going to win at Louisville. I think that's what's going to happen. I thought they would win at Georgia Tech, and they did. We talked about that a lot yesterday. But I think they're going to win at Louisville as well. Louisville hasn't won an ACC game yet, so perhaps you would say they're due. I don't think they're going to quite get it done tomorrow night, but we'll talk about that after the game. We'll talk about that game more tomorrow, sort of previewing the game, and then we'll talk about it after the game tomorrow night right here on the Panther Lair live stream, the live Panther Lair post-game show at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications. You'll never miss it. So we talked a lot of basketball yesterday. We'll talk a lot of basketball tomorrow. But today I wanted to get into something. We could have talked about it yesterday, but I had more things I wanted to say about Pitt hoops yesterday, just in the aftermath of the win over Georgia Tech on Saturday, and then the John Hughley news. I wanted to talk about Nike Subandi and whether he should be starting. I mean, there was a lot of basketball stuff to discuss, so we didn't really get a chance to talk about Dante Cephas. Of course, Cephas is the former Penn State boy, Freudian slip there. I kind of gave away the payoff already. Former Penn Hills wide receiver who went to Kent State for the last few years, entered the transfer portal in December, committed to Penn State on Sunday. So like I say, it happened on Sunday. We could have talked about it yesterday, but I wanted to get through hoop stuff. And actually talking about Dante Cephas deciding to go to Penn State as opposed to going to Pitt kind of leads into a larger discussion. And I think we've talked about this before. I actually think we had a conversation about Pitt's receivers, the state of Pitt's receiver room, and maybe the state of Pitt's receiver recruiting, maybe during the fall. Possibly in December. Maybe we talked about it. I forget exactly when we did. I know I shouldn't say I know. I'm pretty sure I wrote about it in one of our 321 columns that we publish on Fridays on Panther-Lair.com. I might have talked about it on one of these Morning Pitt videos. I forget. Maybe I'm starting to get into that point where we've done these videos long enough that I forget if we talked about a certain topic or not. But the reality is you're tuning into these things every day. We can repeat a topic once every 3 months or 4 months if that's what it ends up being. And I think the receiver topic is worth repeating because it's worth considering what that room looks like right now, what the recruiting looks like, what the transfer situation looks like, and what they're going to do, if anything, to try and build the room up, because it's not a real deep room right now. I mean, with Jared Wayne not coming back, there's not a whole lot in this room. I mean, as it currently stands, they've got 5 scholarship receivers returning from last year's roster. Bub Means, Kanate Mumfield, Miles Alston, Addison Copeland, and Che Wabuko. And so two of those guys have not played at all. I mean, maybe Copeland or Wabuko got on the field for a special team snap or something. They haven't played anything on offense. Copeland and Wabuko haven't played. Alston has played sparingly at best this past season. Means and Mumfield obviously were two of the main three receivers for this team throughout the course of the year. So you have those two back, but really those two plus three guys who effectively have not really done anything. Whether they've been on the field or not, they really haven't done anything. And that's your returning receiver room. You add in 4 freshmen this year, Zion Fowler and Kenny Johnson, Lamar Seymour and Israel Polk. But that's how you're making up your receiver room. I mean, you're talking about 9 scholarship players. Almost half of them are freshmen. And, 7 out of 9 really haven't done anything. And that's the state of your wide receiver room heading into 2023. After Jared Wayne announced that he's not going to come back for one more season. He could have come back as a super senior in 2023, but he announced that he's going to go to the NFL instead. And I think you heard conflicting reports about what he was going to do and which way he was leaning, and he was going to do this or he was going to do that. Ultimately the NFL drew him away, and we wish him the best. Hopefully he has a chance to succeed there. But the reality is, even if they had Jared Wayne back, I think there would be a real necessity for transfer wide receivers. I mean, the last year they brought in 2. Now they brought in Bub Meads later in the process. I want to say after Jordan Addison announced he was transferring to USC, or at least after he announced that he was entering the transfer portal. But Konate Mumfield was a priority right off the bat last year, and that was when they thought they had Jordan Addison coming back for 2022, when they thought they had Jared Wayne coming back for 2022. When they still believed they had Jaden Bradley and Jalen Barden on the roster. I mean, they still made Konate Mumfield, a young wide receiver, a priority in the transfer portal very early last year. And so even then they knew they needed to bolster the room, that the numbers were down, and the numbers are even worse now. Addison's gone. Bradley's gone. Barden's gone. Jared Wayne is now gone. Those are 4 guys that, when you thought you would have all of them, you made wide receiver a priority in the transfer portal. Now you don't have any of those guys. And to this point, I mean, we've seen Pitt, I guess I would say, prioritize some wide receivers in the transfer portal. But as of recording this video late Monday night, they hadn't, nothing publicly had come out about Pitt landing one. Now, we are very confident that Pitt's going to add Dejon Reynolds, a redshirt. He'll be a redshirt sophomore this season, wide receiver from Florida, as a transfer. We're pretty confident about that, and I wouldn't be surprised at any time for that announcement to be made. But even if they add him, and without even getting into Reynolds' production at Florida, which he had one really good game and then kind of not a lot else throughout his career. But even if they add him, that still gives you 10 receivers in the room. 2 of them, again, Means and Mumfield, have played a lot. The other 8, Reynolds has played some. I think I had his stats up here. I did. I clicked away. He played in 8 games this past season. In one game, less than 4 games in 2021, and caught, a total of 12 passes in his career. So you're not even talking a terribly experienced player there. You're still in the same situation, and I don't really get the impression that there's a big push or a lot of urgency to get another wide receiver in this, added through the transfer portal. I think if they had an opportunity to get Dante Sivas, I think they would take him. There were a few other guys that they were linked to or they were considering and they were trying to get in for visits. I think they would take them if they had the opportunity to get them. But I also sort of almost get the sense that they're content right now with what they have, which seems a little wild because they don't have a lot. Now, I'm still very much on the Konate Mumfield bandwagon. I mean, I've been driving that damn thing since last December when they got a commitment from him. I thought he was a great ad. Konate Mumpfield's issues this season, I don't think were any. I mean, I think they were magnified by the offensive issues. I don't think the offense, the play at quarterback, there were a number of factors that went into the reason that his numbers were not all that great. But I thought he played well in the Sun Bowl. I thought when he had opportunities, he played well. And I don't think he's showed us the entirety of what he's capable of doing. I don't think he's come close to scratching his ceiling at Pitt. Certainly not the way he did at Akron. Now, there is a step up in the level of competition, but I think there's a lot of changes that, between Konate Mumpfield's freshman season at Akron and his, sophomore year here at Pitt. I still think Bub Means can do things to help you win games, but if those are your two top wide receivers, you're going to need more. I mean, first of all, you're going to need more to step up just in terms of volume. And second of all, I think you need somebody more consistent than Bub Means to step up as one of your top two receivers. I think Bub Means as a third leading receiver, a guy who can be a downfield threat and pull in some of those catches. I think that's a good role for him, a great role for him. But you need somebody else alongside Konate Mumpfield who can be more reliable with his catches and work in more parts of the field and do more things. And there's nobody among the other 8, if we include Dejon Reynolds, there's nobody else among the other 8 that you would say, boy, you can count on them to do that. So how did this situation come to pass? How did they end up getting where they are in the wide receiver room? I mean, the answer is always in recruiting. I mean, it always is in recruiting. I've been saying this for 15 years. Because when I first started doing this job in the mid-2000s, and really for a while, and you still hear it every now and then now, but certainly back then and through the early 2010s, there would be cranky old guys, usually newspaper reporters just say, oh, it's recruiting. Why do these guys care so much about recruiting? I don't even know why people follow it. It doesn't make any sense. It's a recruiting. Talk to me when they get on the field. Okay, cranky old guy. What I would always say, and there was not usually much of a retort to this other than, more yelling at the clouds. What I would always say is, look, if you want to, recruiting holds all the answers. I mean, it really does. It explains the present and predicts the future. If you want to know why your team is the way it is right now, if you want to know why your team is having the success or lack thereof that they're having right now, the answer is in the recruiting. And if you want to know how your team's either going to get better next year or how they're going to continue being as good as they were, the answer's in recruiting. It's all there. And pretty much any question you have about why this team did this, why this team did that, why did they do this, why did they do that, why did Pitt lose to Georgia Tech, we could find the answers in the recruiting. We could. And part of it would probably be the quarterback recruiting. Why was Pitt able to beat, enter, whatever team they beat? Whether it's the Sun Bowl, whether it's Miami at the end, whether it's winning the ACC championship last year or in 2021. The answer's always in the recruiting. It's all there. And so we want to know why the wide receiver room looks like it does this year and why it's projected to have only, potentially 10 scholarship players, of which 2 have played more than a dozen games in their careers. The answer is right there in recruiting. Now, you go back and look, really, you could say, with super seniors who can use the COVID year, you could go back to the recruiting class of 2018 and say the guys from that recruiting class on should be on the 2023 roster. We were talking about there's 10 scholarship guys, if they, including let's just assume they're going to get Dejon Reynolds as a transfer. Okay, so I don't have to keep saying if they get. Let's just assume they do, and they're projected to have 10 scholarship receivers this year. Okay. The recruiting classes that should be making up that group stem from 2018 through 2023, with the 2018 guys being guys who, if they redshirted, could then turn around and play an extra year, the COVID year, the super senior year. And Pitt's 2018 recruiting class at wide receiver, Shockey Jacques-Louis and Cameron O'Neal. Now, Jacques-Louis played 4 solid years here. Maybe produced less than a lot of people hoped for him, produced less than he hoped for himself, certainly. He transferred to Akron, had a great season. He's out of eligibility now. He never redshirted. That was his super senior year. So you kind of count him, but you don't. But either way, he's part of this group. Cameron O'Neal transferred after a year or 2. I don't even know where he ended up or what he's doing. Recruiting class of 2019, Jared Wayne. There's a hit. That's a good one. And Will Gibson from Aliquippa. Didn't work out. Seems to have gotten back into football. He's not here. Recruiting class of 2020. Jordan Addison. That was a good one. Till it wasn't. Jalen Barden. A lot of potential. Didn't work out. Transfer portal. Aiden Henningham. He's a linebacker now. Recruiting class of 2021. Jaden Bradley. Caught 2 touchdowns against Georgia Tech. Entered the transfer portal the next week. Miles Alston. Has not really played much, admittedly in his second year. Recruiting class of 2022. Addison Copeland and Che Wabuko. Those guys, really didn't see the field this past season. If you look at those 4 recruiting classes, 18, 19, 20, and 21, from Shockey Jacques Louis and Cameron O'Neal, all the way up through Jaden Bradley and Miles Alston. 9 guys. 9 guys signed with Pitt. 9 wide receivers signed with Pitt in those 4 classes. 2 of them are still on the roster right now, and only one of them is at wide receiver. And that's Miles Alston. The only other guy from that group that's still on the roster is Aiden Henningham, and again, he moved to linebacker. If you even look at the 3 classes, take out that 2018 class. Let's say, super seniors, who knows who's going to make it who's going to play 6 years? I don't know. So just look at the recruiting classes of 2019, 2020, and 2021. Those should be your upperclassmen, right? 2021 kids should either be a junior or a redshirt sophomore this coming season, right? 2020 guys should either be a senior or a redshirt junior this coming season. And 2019 guys should be redshirt seniors this coming season. Okay, this is your upper class. This is your veteran depth. These are the guys who should be leading the charge. And Pitt signed 7 wide receivers in those 3 classes, and there are 2 of them left on the roster, and only 1 is playing wide receiver. So out of those 7 wide receivers, Pitt has 1, and it's Miles Alston who has barely played. And they all left. And when for their own reasons, for different reasons, Jordan Addison obviously transferred to USC. Some of these other guys, Cameron O'Neal and Will Gibson, weren't playing. Jalen Barden wasn't getting the playing time he wanted, so he transferred. Jaden Bradley caught 2 touchdowns and left the team, probably through mutual decision. Jared Wayne went to the NFL. There are unique explanations for each of these things. It's hard to look at it and just say, well, their wide receiver recruiting sucks. It's hard to say that because each one is sort of unique. I can't paint with a broad brush here. But the reality is, the end result is 7 wide receivers over 3 classes, only 1 left on the team playing wide receiver. Now, this goes a long way in explaining why Pitt signed 4 wide receiver recruits in the class of 2023. And I like these guys. I like this class as much as any. I really like the 2020 class with Jalen Barden and Jordan Addison and Aiden Henningham for that matter, but just Barden and Addison alone. I thought, well, this is a class. This class is going to be a stud class. I don't know if I'm quite as high on Kenny Johnson, Lamar Seymour, Zion Fowler, and Israel Polk, but I think there's some guys in there that can be really good. Polk is already here on campus. Seymour is already here on campus. I think Seymour is going to have a chance to play quite a bit this year. I think Kenny Johnson can be pretty good. The reality for Pitt now is they're going to need those guys. The freshmen are going to have to play. You have Means and Mumfield and let's say Reynolds, right? If we're going to assume him as part of this, I think that's your top 3. And then it really becomes a question of, Miles Alston, Addison Copeland, Che Wabuko versus Lamar Seymour, Zion Fowler, Kenny Johnson, Israel Polk. And to be honest, I'm not sure there's a knee-jerk reaction to give the advantage to the upperclassmen here. I think the freshmen can give them a real run for their money because I'm not sure that Miles Alston's done anything to really distinguish himself thus far in limited opportunities, but still. And I'm not sure really what Addison Copeland and Che Wabuko are going to produce. Che Wabuko's running track. That might be his main contribution. I don't want to rule anybody out after 1 year, but you just don't hear a lot. This might have to, it's funny because we've talked a lot, particularly after John Morgan transfer. We talked about the defensive ends. Going to need the young players to step up. The young guys are going to have to step up. It's time to have sort of a changing of the guard here. Phase out some of those older guys. John Morgan's gone. Deslin Alexandra's gone. Haba Baldonado is gone. It's going to be Dayon Hayes' time and Nikai Johnson's time and Sam Okunlola's time and Bam Breema's time. we talked about that. I think to some extent there's probably an element of that at linebacker. It happened a little bit this past season, but I think it's going to fully happen, particularly with Servassier Dennis gone. You're going to see some of those guys in prominent roles. Safety, it's happening. This is a transition year at safety where the torch really has been passed. Eric Hallett and Brandon Hill are gone. It's going to be, Javon McIntyre, PJ O'Brien, Stephon Hall, Donovan McMillan coming in as a transfer. There are a number of positions around the team that are having this sort of changing of the guard. Veterans who have been around and started a couple of years are moving on, and young players are stepping into those primary roles. I think it's going to happen at wide receiver. You're still going to have Mumfield. I think Mumfield will be the leading receiver. If he gets a target share like Jared Wayne had over the final 3 or 4 games, then he will absolutely be the leading receiver. I think Means will play and all that, but you're going to have new faces, young players stepping in and really taking over the position. And you're going to be counting on somebody out of those freshmen. I would think at least 2 of the freshmen I would say at least 2 of the freshman wide receivers will play enough to burn their red shirts this year. I would say at least one of the freshman wide receivers will be a top 4 or top 5 player for this team, or a top 4 or top 5 receiver for this team. And that's partially because I think those guys can be pretty good, and partially just because they're going to need it. I'm not sure they have the answers in the returning scholarship room. Among the returning scholarship players, I'm not sure they have the answers that they need behind Mumfield and Means. And we say behind Mumfield and Means, you need somebody to play with Mumfield and Means, and potentially ahead of Means. It's a tricky situation. It's a tricky situation they're in right now, one of their own making to some extent, when the recruiting has produced what it's produced. And again, different reasons for different guys leaving, but the end result is the same. 9 guys out of 4 classes, and only one's left. 7 guys out of 3 classes, only one's left. Creates a pretty difficult situation. And there's been a question of maybe why Pitt hasn't had more success luring transfer wide receivers in this offseason. And I think there's there's always a lot of factors that go into that. And certainly in 2022, there's even more factors than there have been before. But, last year you were coming off an ACC championship, Heisman Trophy finalist at quarterback. Not one who was coming back, but still, there's some prominence there. One of the best passing attacks in the country. Granted, with a different coordinator. Mark Whipple left pretty early in the transfer recruiting window in December, the whole recruiting contact period window. And you had a Biletnikoff Award winner. You had a lot of shine on Pitt's passing game coming out of the 2021 season that you don't really have right now. Regardless of Jared Wayne getting 1,000 yards, you don't have that kind of... There's not that glow around Pitt's passing game. And so, I have to think it's probably a little less appealing than it was in previous years. They're going to need to work to get that back, and they're going to have to count on some young players to help them do it. So, we'll obviously, as the offseason goes on, we'll have more sort of position previews and breaking down the position groups and how they came together and this and that. But in the wake of Dante Cephas committing to Penn State, and it'll certainly be a saga to follow over the course of the spring and the summer to see if he ends up there or when he ends up there. But in the wake of that happening, I thought it was a good time to talk about Pitt's receiver room, where it's going to be a changing of the guard. It's going to be a transition. You're going to be counting on some younger guys to step up and make some plays. All right, we will end it on that note. Be back again, of course, with another Morning Pitt tomorrow morning. Get you ready for Pitt Louisville. And then, like I said, we'll have a live show after the game. So we'll have our post-game show right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We appreciate everybody tuning in today. Hope your week got off to a good start yesterday. And hope you're ready for a Tuesday. Hope it's a good one for you. Appreciate you watching. We will check in with you again tomorrow morning for the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.